So you gonna go see that movie?
I don't know, man. I really don't know. I was thinking about it, but I'm not really a Hollywood movie person.
Oh, really?
Nah.
But this movie's special.
I prefer documentaries, and I wish they would have done a documentary, but I'm not.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be hard to do it on the brother who's starring in the movie because he ain't here.
Well, right, 19th century. And I don't know if they had Facebook and social media back then, but
no, they had slavery.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Some say it's still going on.
I agree with them. Whoever said that.
Yeah. Oh wow! Did you realize your mic was on?
Oh, really?
Yeah, mic was on. You know about those hot mics.
Yeah, I heard about
Gotta be careful about those hot mics.
I heard.
Hello and welcome. I'm Anthony Harris.
I'm Cleo Monago.
And some of you may be familiar with the program that we did as a podcast called Parallel Realities. Now this, if you can deal with it, you're actually going to see our faces.
Yeah.
And this is our faces being seen as part of a television venture that we're doing.
And this is our first episode. So it's going to get better and better and better. So keep that in mind as you check us out.
We hope. We'd like for you to share your thoughts as often as you can in terms of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Through social media and the different venues. But as always, well, first of all, let's tell people about our makeshift set that we have here, and you can certainly tell them about this important picture that's behind us.
Yeah, we're here on the Parallel Reality set, and this is also a work in progress. We hope you appreciate it, and as Anthony said, if you have any comments, recommendations, or donations to the set, let us know. We are on Facebook at Parallel Realities on Facebook, so send comments or whatever. And this is Toussaint Louverture. He headed the Haitian Revolution and was successful and fought for independence for the Haitian African people there, and won against Napoleon, and also had a fight against the Spanish and won in the French. So he's one of my heroes, and I bought this picture at a black art museum in Brooklyn some years ago, and it's my favorite piece because he's one of my main heroes.
And it's very interesting, too, that that picture is of Haiti. I'm wearing a Haiti jacket here, proudly, because we talk about revolts and fighting white supremacy.
Right.
This man right here, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and some other people in Haiti were very powerful, and unfortunately, because of that, Haiti is still catching it from the European powers. And again, people talk about karma, but Haiti still catches it in terms of weather situations too, because they had a serious hurricane that passed through. I think to date, about 1,000 people are dead. So, our thoughts, and our prayers go out to the people of Haiti.
Yeah, and this is timing. The timing is relevant because there's a film that you've heard of about Nat Turner, or based on Nat Turner's life, who was a freedom fighter and he attempted liberation for us, our people, our ancestors back in the day. And a movie was made. And one of the things that occurred with Nat, though he did make his statement, he was eventually caught. This brother here was successful in his revolution, and they actually conquered their oppressors and won independence for Haiti.
It's funny you mention that. There are other slave uprisings that took place. 1811 uprising in Louisiana and Mississippi. I forget the exact name of it, but there were hundreds of people, black people, who joined together and went on a terror for at least 2 days.
Yes.
There are a lot of slave revolts other than the Nat Turner one. We respect Nat Turner, but I hope with the movie being out, it will allow people to do their own research.
Absolutely, because there's the Stono Rebellion.
Yeah, exactly.
There were the Maroons, who we know nothing about, who were Africans who successfully got away from slavery and lived in the mountains. And many of them created the relationship that a lot of us finally have with the native people who were on reservations or on plots of lands that weren't conquered yet.
Exactly. Okay, Birth of a Nation premiered the first full week in October.
October 7th.
Yes, my birthday. And some people feel as though, since the box office returns were not as high as some thought they should be, that it was a flop, with the quotation marks. Your thoughts on that? Do you think it was a flop in some sense?
Well, as we know, the first week it was 7 million. The other film that is the last slave film, which is 12 days, 12 years a slave, it was something like that. But anyway, it was about 7 million as well. And the term flop was never used to describe that film during this first week.
Right.
And it went on to win several awards.
For context, though, I believe the premiere, the first opening for Birth of a Nation was in 2,000 theaters. I don't think 12 Years a Slave was that high. The first week opening, I don't think it was. I think it was about 1,000.
But we're talking about the money amount.
Well. But still, though, more theaters, more money, more seats for people to see the film in.
True, but the bank looks at 7 million as 7 million. But I hear you. So you're right. I mean, 12 Years a Slave did not have the type of reach in terms of exposure and being on screen that Foxlight or Fox Searchlight was able to provide for the Nat Turner film.
More to the point, though, whether it was a flop or not, and I agree with you. This film is important. If you know, for whatever reason, there's been much talk about whether you should go see it or not, and we'll get into that in a moment. But even if you don't choose to go see it, you should know the story.
Absolutely.
And you do your own research. Go to the Schomburg or go online. Do your own research and find it, because this story is very, very important. Now, in terms of the flop issue, is something that Hollywood could be playing some sort of mind trick on us to have us say, "Oh, I'm not going to go see it" or whatever. But you also have to keep in mind that opening weekend there were hurricane situations through much of the southeast, along the coast here. So from Florida to North Carolina, it was pretty bad. So those people were not probably able to see it. So that needs to be kept in the forefront.
Yeah. Well, I think that hurricane, having only impacted the the southeast of the country, don't have that big of an impact on a film that had nationwide seats.
I agree, but I'm sure some people didn't go. So what are you saying then? You're saying that there's some other people just didn't want to go see it, and why?
Well, what I was going to say, and I want to hopefully I remember your question when I say this, is that one of the concerns about it being a flop and that terminology being used, I mean, it was in the New York Times, I think it was, or it was one of those mainstream.
Variety, it was a number of places. New York Times.
That said Birth of a Flop?
Yeah, well, that was the headline in the Root. Yeah.
Right. And so it was quickly called a flop at the speed of light. And there were other films that did much worse than Birth of a Nation that were not called a flop. And I think the reason why people were eyeing it was because of controversy. And it raised it up as something that people were going to see what's going to happen. People are going to come out and see the film.
Sure.
And there have been, we discussed a long time ago when we first heard about the Nate Parker controversy, that it was interesting that controversy would come up right before the film, particularly being that Nate Parker's done many films. And he's had starring roles in other films before. So why are they raising this issue about a 17-year-old event around this particular movie? And the assumption is that maybe the controversy turned people off from seeing the film. But I'm not sure about that. I wonder if, first of all, a lot of people I know went to go see the film. And there's people who are still excited about the film.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And one of the concerns about the term flop was that if a film is called a flop, they won't make another film in that genre again. But white folks get to make films like all the time that flop and get first, second, and third time to do it. So we should be able to get that as well, if we demand that.
Definitely, I agree. A lot of stuff out there, though, in terms of the whole flop issue. Somewhere it circulated that some black men felt that black women were the reason for it flopping because black women turned off against Nate Parker because of the rape.
Who said that?
Through social media, on internet and place sources like that. It was out there and it was seen. I mean, random black people on Twitter, were black men on Twitter were saying, things like that. It wasn't a whole bunch, but it was just out there, and there were a number of sisters who were very upset and angry about that.
Yeah.
Right. So, rightly or wrongly, somebody in their imagination, they conjured up that idea that it was black women's fault that the movie quote unquote flopped, and that triggered a whole nother angle for this whole thing, because then there was animosity on both sides between black men and black women. Some, not all, in terms of this story, and it further continued a bad discourse between the genders, and I found that to be very sad, but also very interesting. How it seemed as though, you and I have often discussed this, that Fox Searchlight had some idea that Nate Parker had this in his past.
I believe that. I mean, What's his name? The guy who owns Fox?
Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert Murdoch was in the controversy over in Britain about spying.
Yeah.
And having
snooping with the newspaper.
And snooping with his newspaper.
The newspaper folded.
which means that our point is that he has a reaching capacity, and he's also a multi-billionaire, and has the capacity pretty much to do whatever he wants to do. And I would imagine that such a corporation as Fox Searchlight vets or does research before they actually purchase the film. And plus, he's known for racism and doing racist things or historically inaccurate things. Like he had a film about Egypt. I forgot what it was called.
God something.
God something, but he got in hot water because it was full of white folks. So it was about an African story that took place in Africa. And he was like, get over it. So it was interesting that somebody with that type of mentality would buy a film about a black freedom fighter.
Yeah. No, I agree. So that created a whole discourse that was really sad in terms of how black men and black women were going at each other. And it just made me think that are we listening to each other when we as black men and black women or just black people have conversations? Are we listening to each other? And if we really, can we see each other's side?
Right.
You know, if one person's saying, I can't go see it because I have issues with the rape, but if someone else is saying it should be seen, right, and it's important, and if you're not going to see it because of the rape, do something else to make this story known.
Right.
You know, that sort of thing I think was lacking in that conversation.
Well, as you know, I was recently in dialogue with a sister, one of the stars of the film. I can never pronounce her name properly.
Yeah, Anjanou Ellis.
I was recently in the conversation with Anjanou Ellis. And one of her points, which I agreed with, is that the story was important because not everybody is coming from a political perspective regarding the film and rape, and we don't know our history. We don't know the history of freedom fighting and black liberation in this country, or the story about Nat Turner in particular. And that since it's out there, we should go see it. And those of us who are concerned about the rape issue have dialogue about it and raise that, after seeing the film, so people can get the opportunity to see this picture on the screen that's about a very important person. But I was mixed about it. I mean, when I first heard about Murdoch buying it, Fox being involved and knowing who they are, I was skeptical. And I was wondering, as I said a moment ago, why would they buy, unlike 12 Years a Slave, wasn't 12 Years a Slave based on a true story as well?
Yes.
Right. But it wasn't about a black freedom fighter, right? And
Django was fiction, was made up. It wasn't real.
Okay, well, see, I got lots to say about Django too, but I'm trying to stay. I got to say this.
Okay.
Real quickly.
Well, I only bring it up because a lot of people, even writers, compared the two movies, Django Unchained and Birth of a Nation.
Well, in case others in our audience are doing the same comparison, I got to make some things real clear about the two.
Yeah.
First of all, the story of Reverend Nat Turner was true, and he took some white folks out.
Let's keep in mind, though, and that's one of the issues that I have. Some may consider it slight that the director, Nate Parker, didn't let this powerful story just sit on itself. He stretched the truth in some way, and in terms of telling the story for the film, there were some inaccuracies, factual inaccuracies, I guess if that's a word, historical inaccuracies in terms of the presentation of the film. When Nat Turner's story is powerful enough when it could have just stood on itself.
Sure, and I want to elaborate on that as well. But you brought the Django up, and I got to deal with that.
Django on.
Django. Django is fiction,
yes.
But what's important to understand about Django is that there was a head master named Sugar something who had the Sugar.
I never saw it.
Okay, well, Sugar something.
A white person.
Y'all who saw the film remember Sugar. He was Leonardo DiCaprio who played this. And to make a long story short, Django did not kill Caprio's character. It was a German friend, the nice liberal white German friend, that killed the white monster. And who Django killed was another brother, a crazy internalized white supremacy suffering brother named Steven, I think his character was. Played brilliantly by Samuel Jackson. So Django took out a brother, and another white man took out the master in his fiction. But in real life, Nat Turner took out a bunch of white folks in rebelling against their inhumanity and brutality toward black people.
Right.
With no German nowhere doing nothing.
One thing also to point out, too, is that I heard people who went to go see Django, when at the end of the theater, they're standing up clapping because there was this feeling of victory. Although it was fiction, there was this feeling of victory that this black character overcame slavery and now he's moving on with his life and slavery's behind him and he's free. Right. Well, here's something else to think about. That whole Uncle Tom, because that's what Samuel L. Jackson, his character, was viewed as, an Uncle Tom. So that whole Uncle Tom thing is something to think about, because I think you and I come from the same perspective that he was a pimp. I mean, I'm sorry, he was a trick for a pimp. and the pimp is white supremacy. Right. So this brings us back to where I'd like for us to go for the remainder of this bit of the conversation, that we should look at people like that as with a little more sympathy and empathy, compassion, as opposed to just writing them off and say, oh, it's okay to kill him and at the movie clap because he's gone. The Samuel L. Jackson character. Because, absolutely. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, because that's part of the venom and the hatred that we have towards each other, and it comes out sometimes.
Yeah, often we get mad at people like Samuel or people who are doing things that are anti-black and kind of repeating but trying to make it even more accessible. I always say we get mad at the prostitute but not the pimp. And the pimp is always abstractly somewhere running everything, but we get mad at the victims. And instead of putting Stephen in context, as you said, we get mad at him. And we might be particularly angry at his character as opposed to Sugar, the guy who ran the whole thing. And we have to unlearn that capacity, because most of these people, in this instance, definitely the Stephen character was a puppet for white supremacy. Yeah. And that's what we should be mad at.
Right. Well, why aren't we?
Well, see, we covered a lot of ground here. We are suffering from internalized white supremacy. And without me getting too deep in this short segment here, a lot of us have internalized God being white, Jesus being white, and we don't want to offend God on an unconscious basis. We don't want to offend white people who we think are more godly than we are. And this is all unconscious. I mean, most people would get mad at me and deny it, but look, we're the same people that do a lot of camouflaging of our Africanness to look another way. Sisters with hair, who a lot of brothers chase in terms of looks and that beauty standards, all this whiteness, and a lot of the things that we do is unconscious, and we don't realize this was going on. So we got to take a look at our behavior, and hopefully during our shows over time we will help people learn how to do that better.
Well, let me ask you this again: what's wrong with? I mean, beauty is inside. For most
no, it ain't.
Well,
you mean?
Hopefully it is.
Romantically speaking.
Hopefully it is. And what's wrong with someone this is just a rhetorical question. This is not my personal viewpoint.
All right.
But what's wrong with a sister or even a brother wanting to change the way they look? What's wrong with that?
I'll just ask this question. Mm-hmm. When people get operations to alter their looks, do they try to make themselves look more African or more white?
What would be?
Thanks Patti LaBelle. Thanks Stephanie Mills. Thank the Jacksons. Well, these are high-profile people. Thank Prince. Thanks these people.
What did Prince do?
Prince has some facial alterations, and it wasn't no bigger nose, and it wasn't no bigger lips.
Okay.
And matter of fact, when we think about unconscious, and some people are very conscious, we think about bigger nose and bigger lips. We think ugly, and so you ask a question. You know, what's wrong with people making the choices that they make? Well, like I always say to people who say that, okay, break out into Swahili right now. And they cannot do that.
Asante Sana.
That's somebody's name.
Thank you.
Well, I said break out into the language,
I know.
With the capacity to speak it in fluidly. And we can't, even at gunpoint, we can't. And that's not an issue of, well, I don't want to, or I'm making a choice not to. You can't. Because you've been taken out of a indigenous African linguistic context and you put into a British English only context, and that's all your psyche knows, and your psyche uses that limitation of language to interpret the world.
Given that, then, how do we? I mean, that's a lot to deal, because a lot of that stuff. I hope you bear with me. A lot of that is intrinsic, internal, and deep within us. So how does someone say to themselves, "That's what that brother's dealing with. That's what that sister's dealing with," and they have compassion for that? Because you don't see that. I mean, I'm not even sure if I'm hearing compassion in your voice for those people who.
Well, I was making a point, and I'm trying to make a point quickly because we're on a set,
okay.
And we have to end this show in this life.
Okay. But you know what I'm saying, though. I mean, some people will write those people off because they got different color eyes, or they're narrowing their nose, or things like that. Is that right? I mean,
no.
This is all part of that.
No.
That prostitute and pimp and hoe situation you talked about.
I mean, as you said earlier, we have to start thinking about what we've all been through and be very honest about what we all been through. And I imagine that the film Birth of a Nation attempts to depict what we've been through. And the majority of people in this country are the descendants of enslaved people from West Africa, and we've gone through some serious stuff. Some that's depicted in that film, and Roots and other films. And if we actually look at people and remember what we've all been through, we might become more compassionate about some of the symptoms of being in this condition, which subjects us to relentless levels of white supremacy, and have us call each other N-words and sit your black butt down, all those other kind of defacing, dehumanizing terms that only come from people that have been in that situation. For example, in West Africa where we're from, there's nobody calling nobody the N-word. They don't do that. We only do that here because that's a post-slavery consequence. And if we are thoughtful about that, we've all gone through this instead of internalizing the myth of us having less bad than white folks, and we're more compassionate, I think we would work better, much better with each other, and we'd be less abusive when we see some of the symptoms of internalized white supremacy instead of getting mad at each other.
Right. Given that, the sister Anjanou Ellis, who's in the movie Birth of a Nation, she wrote a big piece for Ebony magazine about the movie and her participation and all of the controversy surrounding the film. One of the things I thought it was a brilliant piece, and everybody, welcome everybody to read it. But one of the things I walked away with was that she talked about how we over-moralize ourselves, how sometimes we can't. The example she gave was, when you hear as a woman, when you hear a song from Snoop Dogg that she might like the beat to, but Snoop Dogg his lyrics might not be decent, but she loves the beat, and she even regretted the fact that she got down to it. If the allegations about Michael Jackson were true about him being a pedophile, if they were true, would we not like some of his hits as much when we heard them? So I think she was kind of saying that sometimes we over-moralize. Hear me, bear with me. Sometimes we over-moralize ourselves. That because we don't give ourselves any depth. You're wrong, X you out, see you later. And she was saying, have a little room for Nate Parker. What he did was messed up. Okay, whatever. And although he was not found guilty, the participation, the nonchalant attitude, the cavalier attitude was not becoming. And she didn't like that. But still, the film is bigger than him. And I'm just wondering if sometimes we over-moralize ourselves because we have a little negative part about ourselves. We shrink up because under the light of white folks, we're not seen as powerful and great and nothing wrong with us. And we're not like the rest of them. You know what I mean? Those rest of those black people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think what you're describing goes back to a term that I use redundantly, which is internalized white supremacy. And the deduction of black people from a white supremacy lens is that we're no good, we're not to be trusted,
right? So
bad.
So you don't want to be wrong.
So we're looking at ourselves through their lens.
Yeah.
Unlike we looked at ourselves in terms of how we behaved back during Black Wall Street or Eatonville or Rosewood, etc., where we were in collaboration and had each other's back, and we're very clear about what we have gone through because we had just gone through the worst, which was enslavement. Now we don't know our history. I mean, as you and I talked about in the earlier conversation, I travel all over the country all the time, and I have a family, of course. And in traveling all over the country and speaking with my whole family, they think Nat Turner, like I told you before, is one of Tina Turner's brothers. They don't know who Nat Turner is.
Yeah, that's sad.
And they don't know their history, and because of the internalized white supremacy oppression, which makes us not value even knowing black history, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
So we have to teach black people to unlearn internalized white supremacy. First, we have to talk about what it is, which we'll probably do in another show in more depth, so we can check ourselves and be more self-reflective. Because it's a lack of knowing, it's a lack of not knowing so much stuff that has us at each other's throat, instead of looking at the larger system. Where, for example, in media, as we spoke about before, there's no such thing on most TV stations. I'm not talking about cable where all the bougie people and people who have a little bit of money can have access to that, but on ABC, CBS, all those stations, you cannot find in a non-comic context a reliable love story between black people that you can turn on TV every week and see something, a depiction or a show. That's not a comedy, but we love each other.
Black man, black woman.
and black people.
Clearly, yeah, okay. Yeah, another bit of the controversy, and let me just, another bit of the controversy, too, is that, Nate Parker has a white wife. And some people felt that was thrown out there, too. They were grasping when they were presenting this argument on social media. Some people felt that the reason why some black women were angry was because he had a white wife. I don't know whether that's true or not. There's no.
Well, of course it's true. In terms of percentages of its trueness, I don't know what the percentage is,
okay.
But there definitely were people
who were angry.
who are reacting to that.
Okay.
And I think how you segue into that, based on what I said, is important, because I talk about the lack of black on black love, dependable, reliable black on black situations in the media context. And what happens a lot of time with these sisters or brothers who critique the influx of black people constantly on white people on television is that we don't look at maybe this is a compassion issue again, we don't look at the larger context that leads to that frustration. If you're a black woman or a black man or somebody who loves black people who's black, and you never see each other loving each other, but you see a lot of black people chasing white folks, that's an imbalance.
All right, but do you have compassion for the person who chooses a white mate?
Well, I look at that whole situation dimensionally. I don't look at, depending on the person, and in most cases, I don't look at just that he has a white mate. I look at an adult version of choosing the white dog.
No, that's not. Well, do you have compassion for that person?
Well, the reason I've prefaced it that way is because I do have compassion for the situation that they're in, or that they might be in, that led to that. But I get frustrated, and I'm thinking of the pimp prostitute phenomenon. See, I don't look at you or even Nate Parker, just see Nate Parker. My background is behavior and culture. So I see the whole machinery that we live inside of. So when I think about Nate Parker, given what you said, I think, well, okay, this is a black man who's making the film and who is allowed to make a film and got financed to do it, or in terms of getting more money for the film when he made it in the first place. Why did they let him do it? I mean, Danny Glover has been trying to make a film about this brother for the longest, and Danny Glover has been in box office smashes. His counterpart Mel Gibson made Braveheart and got the chance to, which is an epic about a freedom fighter.
The Last Redemption of Christ.
Exactly. So why does his counterpart, who was part of the star power of Lethal Weapon, not got that kind of opportunity from Hollywood? Because this man won. So I personally think, and this is part of your question, believe it or not, that it's possible, this is just a theory, audience, I don't know, that Murdoch and them saw who made this film.
Saw his flaws.
Saw not only his flaws, but his great capacity to love white people. Because if you're going to marry one and have in-laws,
but again, though,
you have a great capacity to love white people, which makes you less threatening in a white supremacist bias context than a brother who's loving Shaniqua, who is down for his people, and his whole life is a vacuum of black affirmation. That's not true for Nate Parker. It's not, his life is not a vacuum of black affirmation. He got a white woman involved. That's not a vacuum of black affirmation.
But isn't making the film? No one else made the film. Isn't it making the film a part of black affirmation by Nate Parker?
Okay, this is going to be controversial, but it's true. The very first Roots that was made, the majority of the cast had white partners.
Wow.
And my point is that I believe that, and that's why I went back to
you mean in real life?
I mean in real life.
Oh, okay.
You think I'm talking about in the movie? Because in the movie they was getting beaten and hung.
That's why I said, yeah. Okay.
I'm talking about in real life, because even though Nate Parker had a black wife that was being raped in the film, in real life, everything, the whole story, going back to 17 years ago, but to now, involves white women.
In terms of Nate Parker.
I'm talking about Nate Parker.
Right. Okay. Luke Cage. You're familiar with the Netflix series that everyone was very happy about, because a lot of people saw that as a black superhero, and this is a rare thing for me.
But let me say this.
Bear with me for a second. A lot of people thought it was an empowering moment for black cinema, if you will. Go ahead.
Okay, but see, I think you brought it up because he too has a white wife or girlfriend.
That's where I'm going.
And let me tell y'all something.
And when a lot of sisters found that out, they were very upset. They were disappointed.
And some brothers were too. I want to make that very clear. But see, this is the issue, though. We are human beings that have both a conscious and unconscious mind. even though you and I are talking to each other, there's other thoughts
Sure.
and considerations going on simultaneously. And this is the situation, and I can get more into this, and we probably will later, but when Batman, Superman, and even the Joker got finished with their movie, they went home to white folks. And even in the film, they were loving white folks. Our Superman, Batman, the Joker, the Green Hornet, all of them it was white on white love. We have one superhero who is in his film. His first love interest was a biracial woman. There's a sister that likes him who ain't getting none, or who got some once, and that's why she wants some more, but she ain't getting it.
Rosario Dawson is his main.
And Rosario Dawson, who's a Latina, is the one who gets to actually kiss him and hang with him, and there's a romantic implication. There is no sister on his arms even in the film, let alone in real life. And the context, just to bring the point up again, is the conscious and the unconscious. Well, so when a sister or a brother who cares has this impulse, like, here we go again, that's not an unjustifiable, irrational impulse. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand you, but I'm just trying to think that while watching that, I mean, because a lot of people love the series Luke Cage. It was getting rave reviews.
Of course.
Right. So I mean, I didn't hear people dissecting it like the way you did. I didn't hear too many people saying that. So,
but you said there were people who were bothered by him having a white wife.
Yes. Yeah, and several other actors as well. But this is more, the Luke Cage series is more relevant. But I'm not sure if people at a mass level are seeing that. They're seeing black folks on the screen. It's a black story. The location is Harlem.
I disagree.
The location is Harlem.
I disagree.
Well,
black films are so rare.
So are they afraid to make that connection? Are they afraid to say
make what connection?
To say that? Are they afraid to say that we don't like the fact that all these actors are getting are with white?
Well, not everybody cares. See, we were talking about the people that care.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of us aren't conscious. A lot of us are just living and
is it
breathing.
a level of consciousness, or is it just, hey, you can love? I think people are open to it now. You love who you love, and hey, peace out. I'm happy for you.
Look, I want to be making something real clear. We're talking about patterns. I'm talking about patterns. Like I said earlier in this conversation, there's no such thing in a non-comic sense in the media landscape on a normalized, reliable basis of a black love story. We can see white love stories all day long, whether it's midnight, lunchtime, breakfast. We cannot see this.
Non-comedic.
So there's an imbalance.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of the side effects of internalized white supremacy is going into what I call a trance. And when we go into this trance, we have a higher pain reservoir. We tolerate or implode less with ridiculousness around us because we're so used to ridiculousness. So we may not have a critique on a conscious basis. But some of those women who saw the brother in Luke Cage didn't have a rhetorical critique. They had an emotional critique, like, damn.
Again. Yeah.
Another brother, I mean, even Alfred Woodard, that's another story in terms of her partner, calls the man fine. And he's constantly being referred to as fine. And in a lot of people's mind and fantasies, it'd be cool for a fine superhero brother to come home to Shaniqua and love her down every week and have a little baby Shaniqua's in Dante's.
Right.
But no, we see Luke with half Becky and Marcelina, if you will, but not Shaniqua.
In real life.
And that's a pattern. It's a pattern. That's the issue here. No matter what people say about love, we should love everybody. There's a pattern going on here. Don Cheadle is in a film, a very popular Showtime movie where he's with a white woman. There's a guy named Kamal Bell, I think his name is,
W. Kamal Bell,
who has
he's a comedian. He has a series on CNN.
Yeah. And he was in one scene that was about gentrification where he found some reason to be jumping all in the bed with his white wife. Could you imagine a star who's black and who loves a black woman loving in between scenes of his TV show a sister? One thing real quick, because it was very powerful and it's relevant. Jesse Williams, who got a lot of praise for his comments as a Black Awards show, talked about sisters, and the camera went on a sister that was his wife. And that was rare, and that should be a redundant thing in the black community, but it was powerful. There's Shaniqua. Damn. And that was part of why people were so excited about what happened. Not everybody articulated that, though there were some who did, but it was like black on black love, a powerful, well-known actor who's breaking it down on the stage in terms of politics and black people's lives, and there's a sister at his side. It was very, very powerful. And in this society, that's revolutionary.
Yeah, I think they have a kid on the way or already happened. We're tight for time, but a lot of people make the comparison with Barack Obama as president and Michelle. Barack's interracial parents, and so that's an opening for that. So we should be a little more comfortable and free with that. I'm of the
With what?
With the interracial thing. I'm of the contention. I'm of the contention that a lot of people before when Barack emerged, a lot of black people were like, okay, you know, what's up with this brother? Then when Michelle Obama emerged, he got thumbs up.
I was one of those people. I was voting for Michelle, but I had to vote for Barack to get her in the White House. But I wanted a undeniably black and beautiful sister like that to be up in the White House for black women. You know, and for black men who stripping and don't know what to do and don't know how to love a sister and there's a question and all in the deep white supremacy trance, to come out that trance and love a sister